Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. It should be no secret that as both individuals and as a society, we often underestimate the negative impacts that alcohol has on our health. In This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, she talks specifically about some of the worst aspects of alcohol use. And I want to read a paragraph where she cites some studies that really point out what an impact this has, not only on individual, but on societal health. Researchers scored 20 drugs on criteria related to overall harm, considering both the harm to the user and the harm to people who are around the user but not actually using the drug. The majority of the criteria related to the specific harm to an individual. Overall, alcohol scored as the most harmful drug with an overall harm score of 72. Heroin came in second with a harm score of 55, and crack cocaine scored third with a score of 54. I'll stop right there, and I will say this book was written in, let me look real quick and see when this book was written. Copyright 2018. Although that can't be right because I swear that I read it earlier. But copyright 2018. I am willing to bet that methamphetamine is rising quite a bit on this list. So, unimportant aside. Going on, so she just talked about the ratings of the drugs. She then goes on to say, the World Health Organization says that alcohol is a causal factor in 60 types of diseases and injuries. The report goes on to say that alcohol has surpassed AIDS and is now the world's leading risk factor, not cause, but risk factor for death among males ages 15 to 59. In the United States, excessive alcohol consumption defined as 4 drinks in 2 hours for women, 5 for men, or 8 drinks per week for women, 15 per men, is a leading cause of premature mortality, with 88,000 alcohol-related deaths in the U.S. every year. To put it in context, I was born and raised in a town of 25,000 people, so that's over 3 times the population of my town wiped out every year prematurely in alcohol related death. That's a large amount of people. That's a significant amount of people. I want to point out a couple of other things here. The excessive alcohol consumption defined as 15 drinks a week for men. For me, as an excessive alcohol consumer, I was drinking way more than 15 a week. I could put back 15 a night. So for those of us who are in severe alcoholic consumption, we're putting back a lot more of this. So there's a few things to point out. First and foremost is that we're talking about alcohol-related deaths. So we're not necessarily talking about things that people even realize at the time are due to alcohol. For example, I guarantee you there are plenty of people who die of heart disease that are excessively consuming alcohol that might not have had that heart disease had they not been excessive consumers of alcohol. But if that excessive consumption was not adversely affecting other areas of their lives, then that heart disease might not be linked to it. If you are someone who's excessively consuming alcohol, 15 drinks a week, for men, as defined as excessive consumption, That's just a little over 2 drinks a night. A lot of people would not consider that excessive. And yet the World Health Organization is saying that that amount of drinking contributes to premature mortality rates, and it contributes to illnesses and diseases that then cause that premature mortality. So we need to be, whenever we're talking about alcohol in particular, we need to be very cognizant of the negative effect that its long-term consistent use has on the body. And when I was drinking, that was the first thing that I ignored. And yet it terrified me. I knew that putting the amount of alcohol that I was putting into my body was a bad thing. And yet somehow I overlooked that. I looked at people who, examples in my life, people who had reached an old age and who had been drinking or drunks their whole lives and had never fallen ill because of it. But then something very important happened. My father-in-law fell ill, and he was in his early 60s, and he fell ill with a very aggressive form of dementia. I think is the final diagnosis that they came to. And there is no doubt in my mind, in the doctor's mind, in my wife's mind, that his extremely excessive alcohol use led to this. And as I was struggling with my own alcohol use, I watched him end his life in a nursing home in his 60s. I watched him end his life in a situation where he couldn't feed himself, where he needed help going to the bathroom, and then eventually where he couldn't go to the bathroom. It was an incredibly sad situation. And as I was watching this happen, I remember thinking, man, the last time we were together, I drank more than he did. The last time we were together, he stopped drinking, and I continued. And it was a very, pardon the pun, but it was a very sobering time in my life. And watching him go through that watching him go through that was a critical part of my decision to stop drinking and to address that in my own life, because I realized that I was so focused on the short term. I was so focused on what alcohol takes away from me today that I hadn't thought as much about what it might take away from me 50, 40, 30 years from now. And we have to think about all of that to get a full picture of what alcohol can do to us. And it's only at that point that we can really start dealing with that reality and start bringing our unconscious beliefs about alcohol, which is what Annie Grace is really talking about and doing in her book. She's exposing our unconscious beliefs about alcohol and providing new information so that we can change those unconscious beliefs and get them to be more cohesive with our conscious understanding about what alcohol does to us. That way we can make informed decisions about whether we want it in our lives, and then move forward with a unity between our unconscious existence and our conscious rationality. So a lot to think about today. But this really stood out to me because I think that any conversation about alcohol without focus on the extremely negative physical impacts that it has long-term on mortality rates and on premature death, any conversation that leaves those things out is lacking. And we've got to remember that when we're thinking not just about getting through today without alcohol, but about the benefits of getting through the rest of our lives without it. That's it for today. Hope you have a good one, and I'll be back here tomorrow with more.